Morning, everyone. It's Joe Waxman, and I'm back with another video. This morning, I'd like to look at the chart of Rudolf Steiner, world-renowned philosopher, spiritual teacher, inventor of all kinds of things. I went to a Waldorf school as a kid in high school, not for the first 9 years of schooling, but towards the end of ninth grade, I went for the rest of my high school. So I got familiar with Steiner, and I lived in the Waldorf community, which was very anthroposophical, which is the anthroposophy is basically the study along the. I think Steiner came up with that name, anthroposophy, and it was basically the branch of knowledge that he became associated with and taught about. He was a very prolific teacher, inventor, spiritualist. Apparently he was a 33rd degree Mason. Now, some people, especially modern times, associate all Freemasons with evil things, and I don't think that's the case at all. There's all different kinds of Masons. Some are good, some are bad. A lot of them have become, I mean, they were all involved in occult knowledge and awareness, including astrology. And some used it for, nefarious means. Most famously, Aleister Crowley, who I've did a mini reading for, and then Anton Levy later. And there were others. But not all Freemasons are evil. I mean, there are plenty of Freemasons. I mean, occultism is neither good or bad. It's not an evil thing. I mean, the church tried to paint it that way because it would cause them to lose power. However, some of the most evil occultists were Christians. I mean, it's really absurd. And Christianity basically gave a cover for a lot of that evil occultism to thrive. So, I mean, by no means does it make sense to come from a religious perspective and say, oh, God or the Bible or whatever, Jesus says occultism's bad and blah, 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 blah. That's all just like, I mean, it basically breeds evil occultism. That's what it does, because it suppresses it and makes it out to be something awful, which it's not. I mean, it's like saying like nature's bad, nature's evil, or viruses are evil. Viruses are not evil. We get all kinds of stuff like that in the modern world. It's just complete nonsense. And it's like, come on, guys, we got to do better than that. Anyway, him being a 33rd degree Mason does not in any way, shape, or form make him evil. In fact, he was one of the most spiritually enlightened teachers of the modern times. I think he's a brilliant guy. I've read his books and I've come across his philosophy a lot, and I think he's fantastic. So Rudolf Steiner, 25th of February, 1861, 11:15 p.m. in Donji, Krajewik. I think it's Croatia. I don't know why it's HRV. Anyway. Okay. Sun in Pisces in the fourth house. Fourth house is not just the home, it's a water house. And it shows our early childhood development, as well as how we like our home, but also like, our roots, our deepest sense of satisfaction mentally, emotionally. It's our heart. Home is where the heart is, right? And so here we're doubling up the water with Sun in Pisces in a water house, right? And he was a spiritualist. He was a philosopher. I mean, that was his thing, right? That was, Rudolf Steiner. I mean, he was into the etheric world, the spiritual world, all that. Pisces, I mean, is perfect for a very spiritualism. There's different kinds of spirituality, right? Like if we're talking about like Alan Watts or something, he was a Capricorn, and I have to pull up his chart. I have to do his chart soon. He was into spirituality, but it was a very earthy spirituality. Like he was just talking about like the psychology and the attitudes and the right way to perceive things. Steiner was a different kind of animal altogether. I mean, Steiner was into like super mystical, like spiritual realm stuff that, you had to be like high enough to verify that he was like talking about the the truth, because it's not stuff that he was talking about, like spirits would do this and that, and then, like, how did he know this stuff? Okay, well, we're going to find out, but it's not stuff that completely necessarily made sense all the time, unless you were as tuned in to that sort of thing as he was, right? Which most people are not. So most people had to take it on faith that he knew what he was talking about, because he was like, spirits before they're born, traveling in the etheric planes, going from here to, stuff like that. I can't even remember. I was just like, when I read it, I was like, it's totally fascinating, but there's no way I can verify for myself, at least not right now. And so it's neither here nor there. It's just, okay, cool stuff. But he was brilliant in a lot of ways. So Sun in Pisces, I mean, they're highly in tune with that sort of realm. There's all different kinds of Pisces. Pisces can be artists. Pisces can be, lawyers. They can be anything. But like, there is definitely a heavy spiritual bent towards Piscean awareness in general. So we see that here with the sun, and we have a full moon, right? Moon in Virgo on the 11th house cusp. Now, interestingly enough, I have moon in Virgo in the 11th house. And there's just something interesting about moon in Virgo and moon in Virgo in the 11th house, both. First thing, moon in Virgo. Esoterically, moon rules Virgo. So there's a branch of astrology called esoteric astrology, and it categorizes things has different rulerships and everything. And the reason for that is because it's considered esoteric astrology. So not like, I know mundane astrology is like the study of like worldly events, but there's a mundaneness to regular astrology in that it applies to everyone. Esoteric astrology is more about the higher evolution of the soul and how the planets express themselves on that higher evolution. And the reason why moon rules Virgo in esoteric astrology is because when you think about the symbolism of Virgo, Virgo represents the virgin and moon is the mother. So together we have the Virgin Mother. Does that sound familiar at all? I mean, where have we heard Virgin Mother before, right? It's not just in Christianity, by the way. That's a theme that has played itself out in other cultures. The Virgin Mother. It's a very popular theme because there's some significance there. There's some resonance in a very high spiritual quality, capacity. The Virgo moon, the Virgin Mother. I have a Virgo moon. So Virgo, when for people who are more spiritually oriented, more evolved, more attuned to their soul, and they have a Virgo moon, that's a very good placement. The moon, I mean, for a similar reason that the moon is exalted in Taurus, the moon in Virgo, for somebody who's mature enough to use the Virgo energy responsibly, can clean themselves out tremendously. I mean, think about that. What does Virgo do when it's really in its highest capacity? It cleans and organizes. So what better thing to have than a clean and organized mind and heart, right? If Virgo can turn its amazing analytical, organizational, puritanical, cleanliness, and sharp intellect towards itself, its ability to objectify and not get lost in emotion, and it's fantastic for the moon. I mean, a non-evolved Virgo moon could be annoying as hell because they're just, pain in the butt, criticizing everything, and nothing's ever good enough, and they're always complaining about everything. Sure. I'm not like that, by the way. Never. Nope. I mean, come on. Of course, I'm like that, but I also have had to heal my own trauma, and Virgo moon, it's fantastic for that sort of thing when you can actually utilize it for what it's good for, right? So, moon and Virgo is great on the higher level, because they can just clean out all the bullshit. The moon is where we keep the past, right? It rules the past, and that's where we keep our trauma. That's where we keep all our dark stuff, our hidden subconscious matter, all the stuff that the shadow work, our monsters, our demons, all the negative stuff is held in our moon and our subconscious, both 12th house, moon, 4th house, you know, the water signs and houses, basically, largely, and the moon plays a very strong role in that. So Virgo is fantastic for that. And really, you can really do wonders with Virgo energy as far as like cleaning out the bullshit, cleaning out the nonsense, cleaning out the shadows, the pains, the traumas. That's excellent for Virgo. The other thing about the 11th house Virgo moon, 11th house Virgo moon in particular, and this is my moon. Why is this so good? Well, in the Virgo chart, with Virgo in the ascendant, Cancer inhabits the 11th house, right? So 11th from the Virgo moon is Cancer, right? 12, 11. This would be the first house. This is the 12th house, this is the 11th house. So there's resonance between a Virgo moon in the 11th with Cancer. This the same concept is called Bhava Bhavam in Vedic astrology. You do house from the house, the house from the house. So 11th from the 11th is the 9th. You know, 10th from the 10th is the 7th. 12th from the 12th is the 11th, like that. Second from the second is the 3rd. Third from the 3rd is the 5th. So there's resonance. We can look to those houses. They use it in a different way in Vedic, but there is something to this where the houses, where you look at the planet and the sign, and you look at the chart for that sign, and you see the resonance between the placement of the planet. For instance, like a Pisces 6th house sun. In the Pisces chart, Leo inhabits the 6th house. So Pisces 6th house sun has resonance. The 6th house sun does fairly well in Pisces, things like that. So there is something here with the 11th house Virgo moon that there's a natural resonance there. And esoterically speaking, moon rules Virgo. So this is a powerful moon, is what I'm saying, for somebody who's more evolved, like Rudolf Steiner. Wonderful moon. Excellent for all this Pisces energy because it's so analytical. Virgo moons, you know, I mean, if you can harness that energy, it's fantastic because it objectifies the emotions. Like, that's a wonderful thing if you can use that properly, that energy properly, to objectify the emotions, to not get caught up in emotionality. And Virgo has the most skill out of any to do that. You know, it can, you know, Capricorn will has some, you know, ability to do that. But the problem with Capricorn moon, as we all know, is that it's completely out of touch with its emotions. It not out of touch. I mean, it's in there, but it's like it can't access them. So it's like too hard. Capricorn is too hard, but Virgo has that nice balance where it can access the emotions and it can deal with them in a very organized way and clean them up without getting attached to them, right? Virgo is the cleaner, Virgo is the organizer, Virgo is the Puritan. So it's going to clean all the emotions out so we don't have to be drowning in emotions or be confused by emotions. That's the excellence of Virgo moon. One of the best signs for a moon is Virgo. But like I said, you have to be more evolved to use it properly, because otherwise you're just going to be nitpicky and annoying and critical as hell. Right. Scorpio ascendant. I'm a Scorpio ascendant, okay? And if you look at pictures of Rudolf Steiner, he has that almost ghostly look to him, like, whoa, dude, chill. Scorpio ascendants are scary. They can be scary. I mean, I'm scary when I'm mad. Probably not always scary because I'm a Gemini, so Geminis naturally have that fun quality, but I can be scary looking. I've been told I'm scary, right? I've been told I'm scary by people who know me, by my friends. They're like, holy shit, I'm scared of you. Right. But Scorpio ascendant is a very powerful ascendant, especially again for spiritual purposes, because here, this is the conquering of the lower desires, right? Conquering of the sexual desires, the desires for power, for money, for control over others. Scorpio is a very controlling sign. don't know if you guys realize that. It's very controlling, and Scorpios have a hard time letting go of control. But that's part of the Scorpio mission in this life, is to let go of control and to spiritually evolve. That's really what Scorpio is about. It's about the evolution. It's not about some higher state of rest where we're just resting in bliss. I mean, that, you know, if anything, that would be the archetype would be Pisces. Not that all Piscean people are in that place, but that's sort of what that would represent, you know, just sort of like resting in peace, you know, bliss. Scorpio is not about that at all. Scorpio is about growth and evolution and transformation on the positive sense, right? That's the essence. That's what it wants. Okay. Both the ruling planets of Scorpio are in the 7th house, which is interesting because it's Mars and Pluto, and they're conjunct by 2 degrees. They're aspecting the ascendant, so that's quite good, right? And if we were looking at the same concept, 7th from the 7th is the 1st. So the 7th house of Taurus is Scorpio. So there's resonance here between Mars and Pluto. It's actually, even though Mars and Pluto are not good in the 7th, not easy, terrible for relationships, there's a lot of power in this placement because of that natural aspect, you know, the 7th and the, you know, in another way of looking at it, that the 7th house of Taurus is, again, Scorpio. So, yeah, this is a very powerful placement for a leader, for somebody who's going to take charge, for somebody who's going to, you know, be a leader in any capacity, not necessarily spiritual, but here it is being a spiritual leader, because Mars is so dominating in the 7th house. Like they make really difficult partners because they're just too controlling, too dominating. They want to just take control and call all the shots. And it's not, you know, 7th house is about equality. It's about sharing. It's about, you know, give and take. And Mars is not a planet of give and take. Neither is Pluto. And Mars and Pluto together are very, very intense, very driven. I mean, he was a relaxed, you know, soul, a very calm, quiet, peaceful soul, but he had this tremendous energy here that was very dominant. Pluto is powerful. I mean, this is almost like a Scorpio descendant, even though it's Taurus. It has the very scorpionic quality. So power and control and authority. And Scorpio ascendants, Scorpio, I can't remember where I heard that, but they have the most CEOs, most world leaders have Scorpio, strong Scorpio in them. I think it's Scorpio ascendant or Scorpio sun or something like that. Scorpio energy in general, it's very common for world leaders because of that power, the control and the power. That's really what Scorpio is all about. You know, they're really strong with the need to control others and power and assets and wealth, right? Other people's money. So very powerful placement for a leader, not so good for relationships, but I think he was very evolved being. I mean, Rudolf Steiner was a highly enlightened being. So I don't think, you know, personal relationships were too big on the radar. And if he did have any, I don't even know if he had any, but if he did have any, he would have to really be conscious to not be overbearing and over dominating his partner. And it doesn't seem like he would, because this seems like an uninvolved person, a very aggressive combination, right? Somebody who's just like kind of an asshole, but a boss at the same time. And he wasn't an asshole as far as I know. He was very kind, gentle soul. So Mercury is conjunct Neptune in Pisces. So Mercury is considered debilitated in Pisces because it's exalted in Virgo. But Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces. So here, Mercury is getting an inside view of Pisces from Neptune. It's becoming very spiritual, very highly attuned to the psychic realms, the etheric realms. In the 5th house, 5th house is quite good for spirituality as well, because it deals with It deals with the like spiritual books and spiritual traditions and things like that. Spiritual practices, mantra. It's by the way, his son is trying to ascendant. That's great for the sun recognition. Even though it's in the fourth house, it's still trying. So being seen, being heard, things like that, being recognized, being on stage and having a really nice presence, gaining recognition in general. But this is why he was so attuned to the spirit world. Like, often you'll see this Mercury and Pisces with people who are like psychic and highly spiritual attuned. They hear voices. This could also be schizophrenic, by the way. Sometimes schizophrenia or just, yeah, which is hearing voices. So like it could go either way, but like sometimes people hear voices more in a psychic capacity. They'll have Mercury in Pisces, because Mercury is our communication. So it's not just speaking and writing, it's also hearing. It's also being able to pick up things, right? So here he's highly attuned to the spiritual world. I mean, that's very, very strong. Yeah. Now I forget the exact degrees of the mass, the highest debilitation, but I'll have to look that up. But it's disposited by Jupiter in Leo. In here, Sun and Jupiter are trading places, because Sun's in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in Leo, ruled by the Sun. So these two houses, the fifth house cusp, ruler with the 10th house cusp. So fifth and 10th. And this is basic education, kids, and fun and games. And I mean, there's pulling in the fourth house too, because Sun's essentially in the fourth house, but fifth house ruler. So fourth, fifth, 10th. So like career success, you know, through his education, through his home, through his early childhood, through his Sun and Venus, through his intellect. I mean, not Venus, Mercury. It's just gaining a lot of recognition here, and public teaching in public. Leo's a sign of fame, so a lot of fame for what he's teaching about, recognition. Jupiter is ruling the second house and the fifth house cusps, but it's retrograde, and retrograde is not going to be as positive for worldly affairs. You know, he's not going to make, I don't know about his finances. I really don't know how much money he made, but I don't think he was that concerned about money. And retrograde is going to make it so that it's less material, less worldly, more introspective, more mental, spiritual. The retrograde, because it's turning back in, it's questioning itself, and that takes on a less physical quality, but a more intellectual, spiritual, soul, and you know, it's self-reflection. So it's more tuned to like growth, spirituality, like that, yeah. Questioning oneself. Saturn, I didn't mention Saturn before with the moon. Saturn is 11 degrees from the moon. That's pretty far, and that's probably good, because we don't want Saturn too close to the moon, because that would create a lot of restriction, a lot of emotional starvation. But it's close enough that here he's becoming very comfortable with restriction, with discipline, with hard work. It's a very Saturn to the moon can be very morally upright, right? Because Saturn is making sure that they're valuing Saturnian things, which is, you know, hard work, you know, discipline, restraint, structure, limitations, things like that. And Saturn does quite well in Virgo too, and it's retrograde, so it's like the restrictive qualities are lessened, but the reflective qualities are increased. So I would say that's quite good, quite a good position for somebody like Steiner. It also, Saturn moon would also push the person towards more spirituality, because Saturn will restrain material success, physical, worldly success, because it's too like, it's concerned with doing the right thing, with being responsible and mature. So he's bringing that all into his mental awareness, his moon, his inner mind. Yeah. It's the third and fourth. So the third house ruling the intellect in Virgo. So that's very good. Fourth house, just in general. I mean, fourth house is a very general, broad-based house for good for, I mean, it can apply to a lot of things, but like early childhood and just being at home. And it also aspects the career, the 10th house. So it's just generally has a lot of general signification. Venus in third house, moving into the fourth house cusp. You know, beautiful home, but also like a love of science and Aquarian type thinking. So like society, utopian civilization, idealism, scientific, just very good, like inventive mind. He was, for fun, Venus would rule like leisure, joy, pleasure, romance. So he liked to experiment. He was an experimenter with thought on the, you know, intellectual plane. That was his fun. That was his joy. He'd be, you know, Venus in the fourth house says that they have fun at home. They enjoy being at home. That's where they, you know, that's where they go to be leisurely and, you know, romance and fun and games and having a good time. So his fun was being at home, being very, you know, Aquarian, you know, experimenting, thinking, analyzing, inventing, playing around with thoughts. Also a need for freedom in relationship, things like that. What else? So we have this really interesting T-square between, so Sun is opposite Saturn. So Saturn's aspecting Sun and Moon. So, okay, so a lot of maturity, a lot of kind of authority, structure, discipline, rigidity, especially in relationship to others. And one of the things about Steiner, and then we have this T-square to Uranus in Gemini. And so Steiner didn't even invent a lot of the things for himself. Most of the things that he invented came out of people asking him questions and saying like for instance, Waldorf schools. So they would be like, well, how do we, Steiner, how do we teach our kids? You know, what are we going to do about schools? Because the schools we don't like the schools. They're teaching our kids all sorts of stuff that we don't agree with. And because of questions like that, he would come up with, you know, Waldorf school or, you know, like, or Dan, eurythmy, he came up, I think, because somebody asked him a question. Eurythmy is like this flowing dance. I don't know. I never liked it that much, but we learned it in Waldorf school. It's a physical movement type thing. But that's Uranus in the square to the Sun and Saturn, because Uranus is very inventive, especially in Gemini. So when people see, this is the relationship axis. Whenever you have planets opposite each other, it involves, excuse me, other people, right? So like Sun opposite Saturn shows that when he was when people were coming at him, asking him questions, he was becoming very Saturnian, very Sun Saturn. It was a Sun Saturn kind of thing. So like creative, but authoritarian, you know, very mature, very thinking and analytical, as well as, you know, spirit, you know, Piscean, imaginative, and inventive. You know, that was the result. Uranus in Gemini in the 7th house, approaching the 8th house, but still the 7th, 8th. You know, so like other people, but also like deep esoteric secrets, right? Combining those two things and inventing, like Uranus is the invention. Uranus is the explosion of the mind, the aha. So that's how that worked. People would confront him, and he would become very responsible and mature in how he went about answering them, and came up with some brilliant discoveries because of that. That's how his mind worked. He needed people to ask him questions about, how do I do this? How do I do that? What about this? What about that? Right. So, I mean, the nodes aren't doing too much here. South node in Cancer in the 9th house. So he started out being very, more emotional, caring, philosophical, God-oriented, higher learning. And that's, he studied a lot when he was younger. Then as he got older, Capricorn, 3rd house. So like being more authoritative, Capricornian leadership, right? 3rd house communication, just going further into what he, writing, speaking, communicating, being Saturnian, which would go to his, his moon, his sun and moon, just maturing, nothing outrageous or that significant about it. So that, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. You have to have some context in order, like, if I didn't know that this was Rudolf Steiner's chart, I wouldn't be able to pull out all the same things, because there can be very similar charts in very disparate levels of human beings. For instance, Steiner was supremely evolved, like he was a very spiritually enlightened human being. But if you have somebody who's not so evolved and they have a chart like this, it's going to behave very differently, right? They're going to be annoying. They're going to be controlling. They're going to be controlled and starved, and their moon is going to be very problematic. And they're going to be delusional. They're going to be hearing voices. They're not going to be able to handle this energy very well, right? It's not, I mean, when you have a debilitated Mercury, it's not good for anything logical. So maybe they're an artist, right? But anyway, Rudolf Steiner, amazing man, and very, very prophetic. He said some things that are very profound and applicable today to the, like, one of the most significant things is that in the future, they're going to invent a vaccine. He was very specific about vaccine. He said vaccine that takes away our spiritual connection to God, and we're not going to be able to, reach God because of the vaccine. And that's exactly what seems to be happening. Anyway, that's another story. But this was Rudolf Steiner. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you want to book a reading, go to my website, macroastrology.com, and I will see you later. Thanks, bye.